Hello again. Well, I started doing alt stream yesterday and failed dismally on that front. Two is perhaps too much for the moment. So yeah, anyway, I'm back today, and we've obviously had some movement in Bitcoin and Ether overnight. Bit of a pump in Asia, something to do with the tariffs, I gather. Don't know if it says on here. I'm hoping my internet's going to be okay. It's being a bit slow at times today, changing time frames and stuff. So we'll see how we go. Um, so as I said yesterday, we got this drop lower than I expected, not very much lower on Bitcoin but more so on Ether, the majors, and on the alt market. As I reload. But we didn't get down to these zones. I was actually kind of liking that Ether was dropping quicker because then I was thinking actually these might hit. I had previously thought that Bitcoin was much further away than Ether was, but then when Ether came down, I thought, oh, actually maybe they'll hit at the same time. But anyway, price didn't get that low before coming back up again overnight, straight up into the zones. So obviously the aggressive shorts that I was talking about yesterday. Wow, why this is happening. Um, Obviously didn't happen. Like, well, it was wise not to aggressively shorten here, even though there were 12-hour and 8-hour supplies and things like that. And so we did go straight back up and fill those gaps that I was talking about yesterday. And so Ether 100% delayed delayed response to some of my clicking, and now the news has come up. It's not going to go away. Okay, there we go. So Ether completely nailed the entry that I wanted. Bitcoin went a little bit higher, but still did come or stay with the lower high. Both are still holding 15-minute demand here. So, and they don't really have decent supply. So at this point, I think, there's still the possibility we take out the high again. So you need to see more follow-up PA to see what happens here. And should be wary of changing the time frames too much. Below, we have a new 12-hour demand, I think, on Bitcoin. So, so I should say structurally on Bitcoin, well, on both of them, like they were both holding that lower demand at the bottom of the consolidation range. So it's not unsurprising that they've gone up here, but obviously it was just looking a bit ropey yesterday, and it's like this zone has been hit many times now. It's come up, and it's also now Bitcoin's now held this previous broken demand. So that was then hourly demand that was holding this smaller consolidation range, and it's now holding a retest of that level. So again, it's a bit early for looking for shorts on this. We could still come up and take out that high again. I didn't comment yesterday that we do have FOMC tonight. So for me, I think that's 1 a.m. So I don't know if I'll be awake or not, probably knowing me. Yeah, and obviously 7:30 normal time, and it is a rates FOMC, so we could see some volatility tonight. So we do have a new 12-hour demand down here, and then an hourly and 2 hourly sitting on top of that. So if we get a retrace down into that area, if you're still long biased, you can still look for longs there. I will consider whether I'll sell alerts, and 61 fib is just on top of that, and it's retested. And as I said yesterday, we did have this, what was a weak 5-day demand. Take the drawings off just to show you. This candle closes very slightly over that red candle, which makes me not very confident of looking for longs on it. And because quite often what can happen if you do get something like that is you do come down and take out the wick first, which is why I was looking for those lower longs as well. But in this case, it did hold the higher low. So, and also in the 3-day demand that I previously talked about longs in as of yesterday. So again, yeah, still holding this higher time frame up structure, but have now hit where I was hoping for the possibility of a lower high. So um, if you've got that short in there, great. You can bring the stop to break even or just above the wick, just in case it does go up again. It's still early days on that. And then if you want, you can look for longs in this 12-hour, 1 hour, 2 hour demand down here if we come back down again. But yeah, just be increasingly wary, and also particularly wary because of FOMC tonight. Um, what else? And then Ether, yeah, probably pretty much the same scenario. I think Ether was looking a lot worse yesterday and has obviously come up quite nicely, but hasn't made the 12-hour demand as yet. 8-hour closing in 25. Might make an 8-hour in 25 minutes, in which case again is be more confident of longs on that, and also has that same 1 hour and 2 hour down the bottom here. So again, if we get the retest down there and you see that hold, you can look to get into longs back here if it comes back. Um, and then, yeah, just see a bit more of what plays out here. On, I think on the everything else, there really isn't anything else to report. It's basically the same. I can delete these upper CME gaps now. So obviously, yeah, we still got those CME gaps below. Um, US dollar dominance had created a 2-day demand, and it's obviously come down deep inside that for a retest on this 12-hour at the base, which is fine. It's also made a 12-hour supply. So again, we're back in this just kind of triangle format for both this and Bitcoin. Is this going to bounce here and go up and manage to break the supply? Or are we just going to get a little bit of sideways where we go up and bounce on there? Bitcoin holds the 12-hour demand. We consolidate more before we get a proper outcome out of this. So I guess we'll see. Others has come up more than expected. So just because I'm going to go into alts, I'll talk a bit about this. So I've said yesterday, so hopefully watch. I mean, I suggest watching the alts section of the stream yesterday because I talked a lot about these structures anyway. But just as a quick recap, so many alts have this. So some alts are in this larger demand to the left. Others are not. Others are broken all-time low or don't have the history. Most alts have, which the ones that have moved up anyway, at least, which is probably 80% of them, have either weekly, 4-day, 5-day demand in here and a lot of chop. So in this case, you can see on others, we've got a 4-day down there. We've got a 3-day up the top here, which wasn't ideal because it had 3 candles getting out of it, but it has held that as support. Then it also has a daily untested a little bit lower and a daily down here. And if you look at alts, they're all in sort of varying structures similar to this. Like for some that last move is much more significant and has come up, when looking at the context, some of them, have come up, all the way up here. Many of them are around the same level as others, unsurprisingly. Um, and as I said yesterday, again, for me, the bias is still down while we're still in a downtrend. However, we're conscious we're on major demand at the lows. We're due some sort of like retracement move. But again, until we break that high, that's the last drop. We're still in a downtrend and it's still possible that we go and break this low. So while I'm looking for longs on a lot of alts in this kind of area, and again, varying degrees of how aggressive I'm being, um, this is still weak demand until it proves it can actually break some more supply. So while we've come high in this weekly supply, we haven't actually broken that last down move yet. And most alts now also have 2-day or daily supply above locally. So I would say on alts, like, you're looking for anything that's got a significant drop as of yesterday, look for shorts on the retest of these 2-day supplies if we get back up there. And then, yeah, you're just watching the lower time frames as these demands hit below. So onto the alts. So I've had, I don't know how many have we got on this? See if this opens for me. Quite a few alerts. So it's just the May alerts so far. So I've made a new watch list. So we've got a week's worth of alerts. If it opens to show me how many, I don't know, maybe 30 to 50 in there. It doesn't want to open now just to be awkward. Oh, here we go. 65. I always underestimate. So 65 alerts just in a week. And you can see we had 250 last month, and a lot of these are repeated as well. So there's actually a lot more than that because you'll see that I put in, as soon as something hits a supply, I put in the long potential re-entry, or for example, I'm going back through and putting in re-entries all the time. So quite often you get things hitting twice. So this would have hit a short. That was actually March. So this would have been one per month, but in many cases you'll see multiple in a month. And some where I'm more focused on them than others. So yeah, so as I said, and oh yeah, probably the only other thing I didn't comment on others as well is again, you've just got to consider where things are coming from. And my concern with a lot of alts is that they're coming from, so this SHIB is coming from a 2-month supply. There's a 3-month in there a bit higher. Obviously, if it wants, it can go all the way back up to the top. But again, we're still in this sort of larger downtrend. But again, it's really much you need to consider the structures at this point. From an annual perspective, this is an annual supply. But then also, we've now had an up move here. Oh, I've overshot that a little bit. We've potentially had an A, B, C, and we're back down into demand at the start of the last impulse. So, maybe we're going to get that. But for me, so that's structurally, but for me, obviously, I trade supply and demand. So if something, even if that's a possibility, if it's got a 2-month, 3-month supply above, I'm still very, very wary of it. just need to be conscious that it can obviously go higher in the supply if it wants to, So even if this is going to continue in a downtrend, it still has to break that high to then really be back in an uptrend again. And so hence we trade both directions. But yeah, with alts, just you need to consider where they're coming from. I always consider where they're coming from, where they might be going to. So anyway, on SHIB, I had this alert go a few days ago. It was 3-day demand. So again, as I've said, with the similar structures to below, we've got, so in this case, it's only got a 3-day in there. And it might also have a 3-week. So that's the other thing, I guess, to consider on most alts. Or a lot of alts have the possibility of making a 3-week demand if we can close strong for the next 4 days. We've still got a way to go. So, but for now, so I had an alert here on 3-day demand on SHIB. It does have a daily downside in here a bit lower. So as I've said, we just need to see what these bounces are going to do. We've got 2-day supply above there, up here. We've got a daily retested, daily retested, but the 2-day has been tested on the daily. And then locally, we've got a 12-hour, an 8-hour, in fact. So in this case, it has made a new 12-hour demand. So what you're looking for when you're looking for these alts is, I would say, you really want something that's had a decent drop from here that hasn't got this chop, because something like SHIB, while that's fine. If you're a high time frame trader, if you're a high time frame trader and you're just trading this 3-day demand with your stop all the way down here, ignoring the monthly supply, then that's fine. But if you're trading low time frames, which I think most people who follow me are, you need to consider what, if you're looking for a long, like what is the new supply? If you're looking for a short, what is the demand that has to get broken? So you would want to keep an eye on something like this. You probably wouldn't want. I do know some people took this first scalp when the alert very first went, and they got a scalp straight up to that 8-hour supply, and now it's dropped back deeper. But you can see it's taken a few days, from the initial alert to actually maybe now look like it hasn't broken any down structure, but it has made a decent demand on here. And that's what you're looking for. Similarly at the top here, you can see, once it had started breaking down, it's broken some local demand, and then it's made a 4-hour supply. So you're just looking for those retests for the bigger moves off these zones. And yeah, watch my video on that if you haven't already. Sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. If you'd waited down here for a retest of this 4-hour, you never would have got it because it bounced off the daily. So you've just got to pick what time frames you're willing to trade on. Yeah, anyway, so SHIB, we've got this bounce off. Fly dancing around on me annoyingly. Um, we've got this bounce on the 3-day demand there, but obviously the bigger risk on this is we're coming from 2 months supply and we've got the 3-month up there. Zcash again. So yeah, I guess a lot of these are going to be quite similar. So again, this one was interesting because this is potentially, a swing fail of this all-time low. I don't love that it's rejected this green level though, which has been like resistance and support multiple times, and then the supply that's broken it. But again, if this is a swing fail of all-time low, then it could get a bounce here, it could get a bounce back down on this daily demand down here. But again, not the nicest one to trade. I like the scope and the potential of this because of the possible swing fail there, and the space has got to the 2-month and 3-month supply above here. Thing I like less about it, as I just said on a SHIB, is that the drop here wasn't overly significant, and therefore supply is just simply too close on this. So yes, while we had a bounce yesterday, it's still created daily supply, and so could just drop off it and come deeper now. And then, neck down there would be the next long entry I'd be looking for if we do get that bigger drop. So we'll throw that alert in. AIC. Okay, so yeah, I think this was more trying to be, so I was being a little bit aggressive on this. So I saw this hit daily demand there. And again, it had a bounce up and into the supply and had tested it. But I kind of like this trend line and the prospect of it taking the trend line stops. And we'll see this actually on Vine as well earlier. Unfortunately, so while it has kind of broken that trend line with this, it's only broken on wicks. So then it's sort of hard to judge. We should move the trend line a little bit. But anyway, because of the prospect of, I think when I looked at this, I think that candle was probably still quite strong. and then I alerted the 12-hour demand in there. Um, and yeah, obviously it's come down and hit it, but it's got 12-hour supply. So I think this is something that's worth keeping an eye on, but it's early days, and you want to see it start edging through this trend line, and making more, flipping some of this supply to demand to look for a long entry, because if it does manage to get through this, then obviously this has more scope to get up to the top there. The other thing I liked about this is that it's hit 3 week demand. It's got monthly just below. Like ideally, yeah, it would have hit the monthly rather than the 3 week, but still can front run you. So again, it was looking for that higher low based on having little supply above compared to so many of the others which have these sort of monthly and 3 monthly. Risk on this is that we're going to create a 3 week supply above, well, a 2 week. So it's run through the 2 week. Yeah, so the risk is that we're going to create a 3 week supply above. So again, needs to run in the next 4 days to not create 3 week supply. AIXBT, this is one with very little history. I actually do have this, haven't saved it in here, unfortunately. So there is a daily demand down here. So there is some history on this from back, pre Mexi. So I've got that alerted on the other chart for the daily demand down here. So it's kind of landed. This was just a bit of a floating in the middle of nowhere. Like if you look at the other chart, and we came up into weekly supply and we got the rejection, and then I looked for the retest entry on that. So this is an aggressive short entry. So obviously it gave a decent move just to start with, but hasn't broken demand, so it's aggressive on that basis. So if you're looking for short, so at some point you have to get in. So like in a perfect world, it breaks here, comes back up, gives you a retest, and then you get the bigger drop. But in many cases, what you'll find is that we go, we bounce on here, we do this, and then suddenly just fall off the cliff. So sometimes you have to be more aggressive. So in this, I went for the more aggressive one. Ideally, I would have liked to see that breakdown break this demand from there. So now I want to see a bit more from this. So if I don't see that second test break demand, or at least come significantly deeper into it, I won't then look for another short. So even though this has made like a daily supply by a hair, I won't look for a second short unless it breaks that demand. You can get the first for the lower high, but this could still be an A, B, C correction before the move up. So that's why I won't look for a more aggressive one. ALPACA is an interesting one. So obviously this was an exit pump. Talked about this previously. I did have an alert up there. Don't know if I've taken it off now. So there's a previous, and the alert isn't there at the moment, but there's a previous high here and a previous high here. Obviously we saw on, I've talked in previous videos on AIRGO and auction. I can't remember. I think maybe Fun. Well, Fun isn't the same example, but AIRGO and auction, they were going to be delisted. Auction I think was delisted. AIRGO was on Binance, but then for some reason I think everybody relisted it, which was very confusing. And so what can happen, is when you get these delisting, you get basically getting delisting fuckery, and it's happening much more commonly recently that it was around here and wicks down. And I think it wicked, if you looked at the lower time frames, I think wicked up and down multiple times here before taking off. So obviously ran straight through that first short entry, and my second one was just a little bit too high. What it has done in the meantime, though, is created a 2 month demand. So while it's extremely high risk, I haven't been through everything yet to find out what's created new 2 month demands and supplies and monthlies, but I have seen a handful of them. Fun is also one of them, that have created this 2 monthly demand. So I threw in an alert there yesterday just to say why not. And actually got a really solid bounce off it. And it was one of the highest gainers from yesterday. If anybody was brave enough to take that, yeah, it was 200% off that level. I don't know. I haven't done time frames to see if it was easy enough to get in or not. It is in like a sort of a giant 2 day supply here, but also now has made a daily demand. So I have alerted this daily demand if it gets a retest back down there, so okay, be conscious of the delisting. This is delisting fuckery, but again, because on Ergo and auction, I mean, to be fair, neither of them I think had this bigger drop before, but both of them went, I think, and took out all-time highs, or at least maybe took out this sort of lower all-time high or lower significant high. So yeah, again, I thought it was worth, potentially looking for longs on this. So yeah, I've got this daily demand in here that I've got alerted, and you've got that 4 hour a bit deeper inside. This is volatile and it's high risk, so obviously if it doesn't work, just get out. But yeah, that's something that's worth watching. Just missed about 10 of them then. Alpine. So Alpine came up into a short entry yesterday. So again, 3 month supply up there. It was really choppy with lots of 4 days, 5 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, etc. all through there. Um, and it's come down quite nicely off there. Looking like it's going to create an 8 hour supply in here in the next 8 minutes. And then back down here, we've got an unconfirmed 5 day in there, an unconfirmed weekly, but I think there is already, I think this one, so this lower, this purple is confirmed as a 3 day. So yeah, I just need to see if this is going to push further. Like my bias is short because we're coming off the 3 month supply. Whether it's got enough structure to actually take a short, uncertain. So like that's a possible short on that 8 hour supply. Might just throw that in there just to watch. Let me just have a look at the lower time frames first, just to see. Yeah, so the risk you've got here on 8 hour supply. So on this first test, you do quite often see a little bit of fuckery. So sometimes you can get the first immediate zone taken out in favor of one above. And in this case, we've got this little 3 trend line stops above there. So if I see that, and then, I mean, it doesn't actually have an untested. If I saw that and an untested zone above here, like an hourly, not so much like a 15 minute, but maybe like something above an hourly, I'd be more inclined to ignore this 8 hour and look for higher. But in fact, this doesn't, it's just got this 15 minute up here that it has already tested multiple times. So if that's the case, then I'm kind of, maybe it's worth looking for shorts on that 8 hour supply for getting that re-entry. So yeah, if you're looking at this one, yeah, like I say, just be conscious of those trend line stops. Like it could run back up into the 3 month, and obviously, it's still in an uptrend. It's a single candle, 15-minute candle uptrend actually, though. So this can very easily just die immediately because this really has no support other than a single candle pump. I won't look at longs on this because of coming from 3 month supply and because of the fact that's just a 15-minute candle going up. If I see a bit more from this, if I see it come into here and I look at it around that time and I see some structure, then great. But for now, no. And it was a bit of a disappointment, but I do think you should keep watching this. So this is one that did fail and has created a weekly supply. And part of the reason I was like into watching this is because again, it was one of the few. Okay, it's in a bigger downtrend, but it's in this larger uptrend. It had come back to monthly demand at the start of this up move. And it did have a decent move off that first bounce, but came again back into local supply and then came back down for the lower low. So this is an example of, one where I have gone for I had a daily demand in here, so I did put a possible long entry on that daily demand, but no, it's come straight back through it. And again, illustrating what I've said, before with those structures that, when you're looking for that retest, or maybe, even if you're doing the smaller waves, this is still in a downtrend until proven otherwise. I do like the trend line stops on this. I do like the fact it's in monthly demand. It could come down and take out these stops down here, but it's something I think that's worth keeping an eye on here. It has now come down to this weekly level. It's got the 2 month level just below. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. I mean, crypto is always a little bit hard on structures. The difficulty with this again is now we've got a new weekly supply here, so this could just reject off there. But again, I'm not aggressively looking for a weaker support. Sorry, very short on weekly supply here because of monthly demand. And that's an example of one that's failed because it's following the downtrend. ASR is an example also actually, so it's good and bad. It's an example of one that failed because of just being strong and like not what can happen if you don't have the structure and if it doesn't break structure. So here, we had this big up move, we'd come up into 2 month supply. It had this slow drop. I did have this alert in from like way back here, so I really would have wanted that alert to hit earlier, much earlier before this big sort of consolidation happened. But I don't know. That's very easy to say that with hindsight. Like if I'd seen it at this point in time, would I have deleted that alert? Not sure because I probably still would have expected, a lower high. But this isn't a kind of an example of, so it didn't have very clean structure here. We had a big 2 hour demand, which obviously was, I think it just went through the bottom of that. And and then pumped up to go higher up in the zone. And I had said previously there was a 5 day and a weekly, sorry, not a weekly, a yearly level. So in fact, it hasn't quite hit the yearly level, slightly front run that yearly level up there, but the alert went to get that short re-entry once the first one failed. And again, now I'm again in a bit of a quandary because this has a new daily demand here. It's a weak daily demand. We're now coming off a swing failure of the high, but we still had a decent move away from it. But again, coming from 2 months now, 3 months, and then just short of that yearly supply, again, I don't really want to be looking for longs on this. But we'll see. Maybe it'll get a bounce on this daily down here. What I have put, so hold on, let me see. So yeah, okay, so it didn't make an 8 hour supply there actually. It did pump before that 8 hour happened, unless it closes below in the next 3 minutes. I think I drew that in earlier, that's why. But it did already have a 4 hour supply in there, and then the 2 hour. So it's come back up inside, but I put the alert. So this is similar to what I just described on, which was the one I did earlier. It was only 2 minutes ago. Oh, AIXBT, I think it was. Let me check. No, it was not. Oh, I can't remember now. Anyway, whatever the one I was describing was a minute ago. Come back ASR. Doesn't want to give me ASR back now. Whichever one I was describing a minute ago. I can load every other chart now except ASR. Okay, here we go. That had those trend lines stopped, and then where I said if there's a zone above, I'd be inclined to. It was Alpine, that's what it was. But if it was a zone above that hadn't been tested, I'd be inclined to look for it to take out the immediate zone. That's similar to here. So at the moment we are seeing a sort of rejection in 2 hour and 4 hour supply there. It's made a new 1 hour demand, so I would hope for another move up into there. Again, possibility of longs if we come back down here, it's up to you. It really depends on what Bitcoin is doing as to whether this is going to hold. But the overarching structure is down from the 3 month supply perspective. So even if it does get a bounce here, I'd still be looking for shorts to get back lower. AVAIL, yeah, and that really got thrown off a cliff there. I'm not really sure why. Maybe it just consolidated for too long. So again, back down in a 3 day demand. This was one I liked, from back here. I was talking about this in the group because I was saying, it does if it does want to move, it's got the real capacity to move really high because it's just got lots of daily supplies all the way up here. So this should definitely be on your radar. It's also from the same perspective that I just said. It has this big drop down into this 3 day demand, and again, it hasn't got local supply. So even if it doesn't go all the way back up, and be hugely aggressive, but at least it's got no resistance on this drop here. So these are the types of things that you should be looking for when you're looking for which long should I enter of the 8 million alerts that have gone off that Lisa's had, or of your own alerts, what your own looking at, you're looking for those ones that have got a bigger drop. And assuming there's no, news or catalyst for that, such as a delisting, and then move that alert down. Yeah, because at least it's got space to move up, even if you're just taking the scalp up to the next supply. So I'm going to move the alert down to 1 day demand down there, in case it does come back deeper. And then, yeah, world's your oyster if it does want to run on this, so definitely keep an eye on that. AVL, this is one, again, I was a bit more aggressive on the long entry here. I'm not really sure why, actually. So to be fair, I do say in the group, like some of them I just throw in the entries and I don't really think through the structure too much. Like in a perfect world, the aggressive long entries I put in should be on things that are holding support over here, not on things like this, which have kind of broken below range. I think I was saying, if this gets back to holding the range, it had made a new daily demand here, had multiple hits on supply there, so there was the chance this was going to run. This is another example. It's got 3 day demand. It's come off that now. It's got a new 2 day supply. So I really just kind of potentially leave this alone. I had another alert not on that 3 day, but on this 4 hour below because there was a bit of a gap there. But yeah, this is just quite new, so there's not much to really give away what direction it wants to go in as yet. So it is on 3-day demand. It's not the best 3-day demand either. Actually, again, it hasn't broken supplies. It's really in a sideways range, so I'd probably leave that one alone at the moment. Um, baby. So this is again similar example. We had a 4-day demand here, I think, or 5-day. 4-day demand. So I had an initial alert go off on the top of the 4-day, and then I said, there's a daily, and I think there was a daily deeper inside it. So I had a second alert go on the daily. It's actually wicked through the daily, although it arguably is still holding the 4-day. So again, it's just like this is very new, not much history. Is this going to make a higher low here? Anybody's guess, but something you can keep an eye on. And potential shorts up there if it gets there. MEXC obviously does have the sort of weird history that MEXC does. So from 28th of March, sort of for some reason, 31st of March, price was all the way back down here, and then it opens on futures like a week later, with all the way up here. So I'm never quite sure if those zones that down there are valid. I kind of have seen them hold on another coin, but then there have been other examples. For example, Trump, where they were just messing around with the tickers because they already had a Trump coin, but then the new Trump coin got launched. So they tried to call it something different, and then for a while they ended up with both charts on the same, both prices on the same chart, just to be super awkward. Bio, another example, but this is kind of still the bigger downtrend. Don't know if this has history here that I don't have on this chart. Unsure, but if it holds here, potentially has scope for a bigger up move, but is coming off weekly supply. So again, still could just continue the downtrend here. So you can keep an eye on that, but it's anybody's guess right now. BNBCARD actually looks quite similar to Bio there. Again, I had an alert on this 2-day demand down here. Like really, I would have wanted this to hit. I probably shouldn't be that on there yet. Oops. I probably would have wanted this to hit on this candle again, like obviously it hasn't. It's taken ages to come and retest. And the problem then with the ages to come and retest is that we now have a 4-day supply above. Having said that, this does still have a lot of space. Again, it's not got much local supply, so if you want to take that as a scalp up to there, you can keep watching it. Is it overly high probability? Probably not. Again, does it have history? I'm not sure, so you can go off and check that. BSW, this is another more aggressive one, and I think I put even on this, maybe I think put the comment that this might be stupid, or at least I was thinking that, I think when I set the alert. Let's see what I wrote. Very aggressive coming from 2 months supply. So yeah, no, I didn't put it was stupid, but I put it's very aggressive. So, but again, it's hard to know, like, if the market is going to reverse into like a big up move. This did have a very strong move up. Yes, it's in an eternal downtrend. Yes, it's come back into monthly supply or 2 monthly supply there. There's a 3-month a little bit higher, but it's just a question of like, even are we going to get like, this last up move just to take out that high even before the drop. And while you've got a high time frame demand that's been made, right under resistance or near under resistance with that rejection, maybe this 3-day is enough to push it back up again. Also on this, it may create a 3-week. So again, just need to see what the close is like. It closed above this weekly just by a hair. But yeah, so keep an eye on that. But yeah, it's again probably not the best probability because it's got chopped through here. I mean, it could just run up through the chop then. It's got an 8-hour supply in there. But yeah, I won't be looking for shorts on this too aggressively yet because it's got this 3-day really close to price. And then a daily and another daily below, so nothing alerted down there as yet. CATI, you can see, again, it's similar to that BSW, so this actually hadn't come off a high time frame supply. So I actually was hoping, I think, from this that we get another push up into proper supply, but no such luck on that. I guess, it is just coming off these wicks at the bottom of the triangle. But yeah, I think I was really hoping on this we might get a push through the triangle. I think AVAIL or AVA or one of those had a similar kind of triangle. I just don't know what it's done with it. Let's have a look at AVAIL again quickly. No, it can't have been AVAIL. Or AVAI, maybe. Um, anyway, So yeah, in this case, and again, this is the risk I highlighted at the beginning. This is a bit of a choppy. It had a sort of clean 3-day demand there, but an untested daily at the base down here. So in this case, it's just run straight back through it. Let me just see if there's any other. Yeah, and now has possibility of a 3-day supply there. So again, I probably wouldn't be looking to long this over and above everything else, unless I start to see some movement up through this 3-day. So there's a 3-day there, there's a 2-day. I mean, they're not best zones, they're too big. Not clean. Right place, yes. Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's a lot of little 8-hour supplies in here. So could this kind of scenario, it can just run straight through. It has made a higher low here. It's got a decent wick off there. But yeah, just that 3-day level's just a little bit close to me to think it's worth looking for a long run in there. So give that a little bit more time. CHEEMS, I put in an aggressive short, and I was a bit uncertain about this. Again, we had those trend line stocks above there, and this is kind of a higher time frame version of what I was just describing for on that structure. This does have a weekly supply though, so I thought it was worth an aggressive short. However, what also happened is it then closed above this level and then sort of borderline flipping this weekly supply into demand. So I'll take out the color for now, but you can see potentially this is now a weekly demand, but it's just again in the middle of a range. Didn't create a 5-day demand there, so now is coming off 4-day demand. So it had already tested the 4-day demand on the green candle, and now it's come back into that zone again. And similarly, also now has a 3-day demand. So again, it's choppy and fairly nasty, but and yeah. So I wasn't convinced on this. This wasn't going to go up here. Um, it is again one of the strongest charts, but I also thought there was a fair chance or a reasonable probability that it might fall off that trend line. So we're still in a bit of no man's land to see if we're going to actually fall off the trend line or not. We have monthly demand down here. If we do get back down there, um, excuse me. Looking at the lower time frames on this. So yeah, that was that just 4-hour supply. So again, this, and I want to reiterate this again, if you're looking for zones, there is no reason, and particularly on the short side, because do think it's more reliable on the short side than on the long side. But if there is a supply, and you can trade a nice clean supply like this, it hasn't been tested, it's had a decent move away from it, it's at a higher time frame supply. There's no reason you can't trade that for a short. Similarly, here, if there's a 4-hour at the bottom, if you want to trade this for a long, you can do that. In this case, it's broken support, so it's less ideal than this one. It's not at a high time frame um, demand here. Um, but if you're trading longs and shorts off 4-hour, 8-hour, 12-hour at the start and at the ends of impulses, then I think you're going to make money. And just trade them as scalps, like don't try and predict whether this is going to go all the way back down to this monthly demand, or take 2 trades and take 50% off, take one of them off, when it gets demand, and hold the other one and see if it does fall. I mean, it's up to you how you trade these things, but um, if you trade a frog in my throat, if you trade the starts and ends of impulses. It allows you to have much tighter stops rather than kind of trading in this middle area here in much higher time frame zones, which could take long time in the zone, and can potentially give you quite high risk to reward. So cookie. So yeah, I think this actually hasn't hit my long entry. So again, I had a short entry on that off the 2-week supply. It does have a 3-month demand, so I actually was long biased on this. It's not the best 3-month demand. Hasn't made anything new there, I don't think. So yeah, it's just coming off that 2-weekly supply there. So I think I was at least hoping on this that it would get a scalp down into that daily demand. And we might still get that. So if you want to look for a short re-entry on this daily supply, that's a possibility. Short up in here, potentially just take profit down on that first daily demand. But again, still in that 2-week supply. So we just look at the 2 weeks. So yeah, hopefully we won't get this and then fall all the way back down there. But again, even if nothing else, that's going to take time. So this was an aggressive long entry on that. We still do have possibility of 3-day down here getting tested or something like that. Again, I don't love this being as a 2 day, a little bit deeper in that as well there. Is that a 2 day? No, it was another daily. I don't know, so I do daily from back here. Um, I don't love taking this when it's already hit very close to the zone. If it goes back up and hits supply, but again, you can just see, again, it's got that 3 month demand, so I think it's worth looking for more aggressive longs on that. DRB was a bit of a messy one, but again, this came and hit 8 hour demand, and it actually did have kind of a decent up move. So I mean, while it looks small in the grand scheme of things, and I guess it's small from a risk to reward perspective, that was like a 35% move up off that first bounce, and then yesterday's PA took it down a little bit deeper. Just check we made a new local supply on this. Okay, so yeah, we're in an 8 hour supply now, and we're also made a new daily. So yeah, I wouldn't be looking to long this right now. And frankly, it's already up 20% on the day anyway. If this comes up into here and creates a daily demand by tomorrow, then if it closes over that line, then I think you can potentially look for longs to take out this trend line and or even the bigger trend lines perhaps. So it could kind of be a blow off bottom here, but we still need to see a little bit more on it. And it is only in a potentially, I've seen as many of these demands fail as work, when they're on the initial pump. Um, and yeah, so this is very high risk demand to enter. And it also really has had a long time in consolidating before it's come back down to here. Just check there's no other weekly supplies or things in there that I haven't got noted yet. So yeah, there's a four day supply up here. So this does have some scope to move up if it wants to. That's also now a 3 day. So yeah, I wouldn't be looking to long this lower sorry, to short this lower 3 day on the basis that we are coming off demand and we do have those trend line stops through there. So I would still stick with the possibility of shorting up here if it does come back through all this stuff. But really for now, I mean, either watch the lower time frames here, or but if you get that daily close above here and it doesn't reject super hard from this consolidation before the drop, then this might get a move up. Drift. Another one, it's come off a daily demand there. So this I kind of, again, I like from a very high time frame perspective. It's just a question of how much deeper it wants to go. Take this out now because it's come quite deep. So it had a monthly demand and then it's sitting on 2 monthly demands. So it's come right back to the start of this last impulse up. It's come off weekly supply here. It's one of the few that doesn't have monthly supplies and things. Like my alert from obviously way back when was much higher anyway. But yeah, so again, this is bounced just above that daily demand. I did reset the alert for the 4 day below should it drop deeper. But again, daily supply right there. I wouldn't be looking for longs on that right now. EGLD is one that again that does have space, so it's got a 2 day supply up here, like I said, many of them have. So again, coming off 3 months at the lows. dubious 3 month because it's when the Binance chart open, but again, worth watching for that higher low. So I think this is worth keeping an eye on because again, it's got at least space for a scalp into there, and then if a market or this does want to move, it has scope to go a lot higher. FHE, I was watching, like really closely for the hope of a breakout on this, and I've really got longs off most of the lows in here. And I've been telling the group to watch it, but again, it's while it's held in yesterday's dump, it's not making any significant high time frame demand yet. So it's really just consolidating and thinking about it. And my concern with this length of time it's consolidating is that it could just collapse. I think we saw Wiz. I think again, which had a very long consolidation. It's a different structure. Just kind of fell off a cliff, and maybe even JELLYJELLY. I don't know what that's doing today, but yeah, that looks similarly like it might fall off a cliff last night. So I had an alert here for the daily demand there, which it got triggered, but then bounced slightly higher. Again, didn't get out of this, so I had this initial little consolidation there. Then I reset the alert for the next daily there, and then I said we could get a wick down to this hourly or 2 hourly at the bottom there. So we did get a wick lower yesterday, but obviously it's come back up again. So it is getting bought back up reasonably well. So It's not the cleanest from a trend line perspective. But yeah, that's still, something on my radar to keep watching. And then I have an alert here for, if it breaks all-time high. But I think now, again, there's nothing at the moment that I want to look for longs in this consolidation. So I need to see this. I need this to push up and then to catch a retest because I've tried to do this before. And if they're not ready, then they can really try and wick you out first. FLM I now have short on, so yeah, that worked really quite nicely. So this has come back through. So I think one of the other ones I was talking about earlier that it was like potentially looking for longs on this local demand. Which one was it? BSW, I think maybe. And I was saying it's coming off 2 months supply, so it's a little bit risky. So you can see similar here that it had a day or so consolidation on this like daily local demand, but now it's falling back through it. So, but I mean, having said that, this is slightly different because this actually had a last push here. Actually, I think BSW or whichever one it was quite similar to this. I don't really think there's much difference. But yeah, so anyway, that's the risk you're running, if it's coming off take that now, take that off. But it's coming off this 2 month supply here. Then we are expecting, like if the 2 month plays out, let me show you 2 month chart. When you see these rejections, for example, here off this high time frame supply, you expect it to go and take out the low of this candle. That's really strictly what your target should be. I mean, nobody would trade probably that high time frame in crypto, but these are always kind of the really aggressive ones I look for. So you can see it's just tapped up into that 2 month and it's come straight back down again. So again, it's not the cleanest to look for a short re-entry here. Did have a 2-day level that it's just tested back on there. But yes, I mean, you can look for longs on this if it comes back down here, but it's not the ideal thing to look for longs on due to the 2 month supply. So I'd really be liking to look for shorts on a re-entry. So this actually might be a decent short for a re-entry up there. Bring this alert down just to keep an eye on that zone if it comes back up there. There is also an untested 4 at the top, so I need to just put that in the comment just in case it runs through. So I'm going to put here 8-hour supply, 4-hour above, it runs through. So yeah, provisionally. So you're looking for basically what you're looking for is that this 2 months played out, we've broken some support, or there might be something lower time frame in here that I need to look at, and that we're going to get a retest and hopefully get the bigger drop after that. And in some cases you get it, in some cases you don't. Yeah, the difficulty with this actually is this hasn't actually really broken structure. So what you find is while it may have a daily demand in here, like really what the structure is the demand that's at the top of this up move. And if you go to the lower time frames, quite often you can see sort of quite different pictures. So in this case, we've got this hourly. So it's come up, it's made a clean hourly demand which has not been tested. And then it started making new demand above that. Hold on. Let me see. So it's not always overly clear from my perspective. But yeah, so it's made this consolidation, it's gone up, now it's made a higher high, now it's made a higher high. It tried to hold here briefly before dropping back down. But really, when I look at the lower time frame, I still think that this could bound this whole consolidation. So if we do get a bounce like now, or like another little bit more of a drop, this could still be just a whole consolidation sitting on the last pump. So I guess we'll see. But it's a little bit of a choppy point that on the low time frames anyway. And we are coming off a 12-hour supply there. But if we do get a pump back up there, I think that's worth looking for shorts. Fun. I might have to do a part 2 of this video later as well. Brief smoothie break and cigarette break. Okay, so this was another one like ALPACA had a 2 month demand. So like I was very bullish on this at the lows, but unfortunately it was just painfully annoying and came really, really deep down inside it, so I had a few kind of false starts on longs on this, but it was in a yearly demand. So, and it is a yearly on Binance. It's from the opening candle, which isn't ideal, but it is a yearly in Binance. So I did want to be bullish on this. Now, actually, what I'm noticing is what I haven't noticed previously is that we actually also have a yearly supply. We're still on the yearly, yes. So that actually changed my view slightly. Make that a year. So we bounced on this yearly demand and we come back up into yearly supply. So that's kind of makes me actually says maybe makes me not bearish but slightly less bullish than I was anyway. Let me have a look. I'm confused what just happened to my yearly. Did I just delete it or did I put the line in? Maybe I deleted it by mistake. Oh, I was supposed to delete it 6 months actually. Okay, so drop down into the yearly. In fact, came up into that yearly first, I think, and that's November. So yeah, so this test of the yearly has only happened this year and sort of now. So what we had here, we came back down into the yearly demand. We had made a yearly supply. It also had a 2 month supply, so we went right back up and eventually all the way through the 2 month supply. And now we're back having flipped this 2 month supply potentially to demand. It's not strong again, you know, it hasn't closed above this wick of the previous candle, and it wasn't strong on this side either. So again, it's not ideal, but it was worth looking, similar to ALPACA, for the possibility of long entry. So I think that's this one, yeah. So initially I got an entry for a longs, like following the big pump. I don't even know what the trigger was for that pump up to this level. I can't remember what that was there. I think it was like a 12-hour demand or something. So I got the long entry there, but then it didn't get the lower high of actually what would have been an annual supply there, but I then came up higher. Then I think I didn't look at it, so then it was getting, I got the retest on the retest of the daily in here. It did come back up again, but didn't actually break that daily before coming back down. So now we're in this 2 month demand, and then again, similar to one of the, I think, DRB that I was saying earlier, we now have this new daily supply here. So this needs just a little bit more time. It's got a 5 day supply at the top there. Okay, so now I know this has yearly supply. I'm kind of more inclined to look for shorts possibly in here. But, or is it going to go through this yearly? Decisions. I think it's worth looking for a short on this 5 day if we get back up there as well. So failing that, we can go all the way back up the top. But again, you know, it has such a big move up here. You know, maybe this will reject there and come at least back down lower inside here. You know, or even if it just gets a wick similar to ALPACA up into here, and then comes back down. Again, might give me a retest. So the other thing is like to look for potentially to look for long entries. So even if this doesn't give a short trigger for the 5 day supply when it gets up there, you know, if it does then start consolidating, if it's made new demand, then that at least reminds me to look at this, and then maybe I'll get another long entry if this has come back up and made new demand. So certainly, for example, you know, if it does close up here, flips this supply current daily supply into demand, then you can get a long entry, even if you only get out up here. So I guess we'll see on that. GFM's like one of the more horrible looking charts. So this gave a really nice short off weekly supply in there. I think I was going to put another one in yesterday, but then I didn't. So now obviously has made. So this is, yeah, something just to look for short re-entries on this if you want to. Clearly it's in a continuing downtrend. I've got a feeling this might have history on Dex Screener as well, though, so maybe just go back and have a look on Dex Screener at where potentially there might be some support on this. So yeah, that would have been nice short re-entries then, but now I want to see a little bit more from this, I think. You know, it's just getting a bit too choppy here. And I'll have a look at this. I'll have a look at this and find out if there's any other support, or whether this is just potentially going to continue this ongoing downtrend. 2 week supply up there that was just tapped, and the 3 week supply was tapped as well. So yeah, it's kind of tested all the zones that I really want up here. Otherwise, you know, it's going to be back in an uptrend. And so yeah, you either going to, if you want to short this, you either need to look for an aggressive short sort of now-ish on this daily supply, or just wait till it gives you something. I'd rather see a bigger drop off and then back up and test some supply. GIGA. There's another one, I guess, that hit a tad too early. So it has a 2 week demand in here. So I was kind of, again, finding this potentially more promising. Take out some of the superfluous levels. But yeah, so I think this is worth looking for longs on for sure. Assuming it's not dragged down by Bitcoin, it does have a 2-day supply in there. Um, Obviously, it's not really. There is some support over here to the left, but not heaps of it. Um, I think I just did pull an alert down deeper if it went deeper into this 2 week down to this daily at the bottom. So, that would kind of be the safer entry, but also then it's also quite a corrective entry. I mean, this is already a corrective pattern. Um, but you wouldn't want to sort of start to see this if it can't get any, it should really be getting strength and this be an impulse. And then maybe it can test that before moving up. So keep an eye on this around now. Just be conscious there's a 2-day supply above. But again, like some of the others I've commented on, it has a kind of a lot of space, a lot of zones here already tested. So if it does run, this can potentially run quite significantly. I've got an alert there on 2-day supply there. I think, yeah, that was the last kind of one that hasn't been tested at the point of breakdown. So worth watching if it does get up there. Go mining shouldn't be on the list. This was actually a rogue wick yesterday that went off next C. But not on the futures chart. So I've reset that alert. And this again, remember, we recall was one that I was bullish on. So 3 month demand is one of the stronger charts. So it's come off 3 month demand. So I think anytime you can find a long entry on this, you should. If it makes a weekly demand at the end of this week, that would be one time to do it. I think there's nothing really in there at the moment, at least on the higher time frames for long. So there's no new entries I can put in other than, if it does make a lower low. But, that would be where I would look potentially to short. But I was also conscious, I think I put, coming from 3 months demand. And it was also to look for long re-entries. It might actually be worth looking for a long on this 12-hour in here. Put that there as well, in case that comes back down for a test there. 12-hour demand in there. Hopefully, FOMC isn't going to wreck everything. I'm kind of halfway through this now, do we think? Thinking I'll sign off and upload this and then again do yet another video again later. Again, it's hard to know if I can actually do it tonight or not. So this is a monthly supply, so I have an alert on monthly supply and there is a 2-day right inside it. So I don't love the structure of this from shorting on a month, but it is a monthly, so I was kind of like in two minds. But anyway, it did hit long entry and grass on 4-day demand there. So I just kind of need to see what the reaction is coming through here. It's pretty messy up there. It does have a weekly supply and might even get a 3-weekly supply. So just be a bit careful this doesn't close with a 3-weekly supply. But I think that was also one of the reasons it was worth looking possibly for shorts on this. The monthly, then if it confirms a 3-weekly, then you've got something locally as well. But it has had quite a decent move off that low, so I guess we'll see what follow-up this gives. And then similarly is on 2 months demand at the base. But only, from the start of this year, so it's had a big move up, and then now it's just consolidating. Gun. Again, it's looking a bit more, so it was in a weekly demand and it's come all the way back down to the bottom of it, a weekly demand. It's come all the way back down to the base, so I don't really like that. May flip that to a weekly supply, so just be a little bit careful on this, but it did have a 4-day in there. Yeah, I needed a little bit more time on this to see what I think potentially it's going to do. But yeah, I didn't really like supply, so I think it could run back through that. This daily has already been tested. Yeah, this one just needs a little bit more time. It's very, very new, so it could, in my opinion, go either way still. HEI. Down to JELLYJELLY, and then I think I'll upload it because I want to go to the gym. So go to a class a bit later, but I want to go to the gym first. So this year I had a short. This was kind of in one of the ones that has it's difficult. Well, I was slightly more aggressive on that one because this was at the point of breakdown. So I said, 1 to 2 day supply and worth looking for a short. But obviously, and it's hard because some of these, they have so much chop through here. They're sort of weekly, a little bit higher, monthly, 2 month higher there, and a 3 month higher again. So Um, it's hard to know whether to be aggressive or not, but in some cases it's kind of working out for me and others not. But yeah, so this has come down quite hard off that short, so that's pretty nice. I think it's not given me enough it has got a new 4 day supply in there, but again the wick's come pretty close to testing that. The other difficulty with so much chop is that things are getting tested on all different time frames as well. So um, sometimes I'll look at it and I'll say, oh, that 3 day hasn't been tested. And then if I go down to the daily, I can see it actually has been tested on the daily. So then it's sort of like, then it makes it, less reliable, but again, still could have a reaction. Um, but anyway, I don't want to look for any longs on this. Initially I had the last hurrah move there for a possible long on the higher low, which obviously failed. Um, but yeah, I think this should be short bias for now, although it did have a decent pump here. Short bias until I see a little bit more from it, I think. ICX and LRC were kind of interesting. This is looking like it's going to break down. So these had like really big pumps the other day, and then they did make 4 day and 3 day. No, not 4 day, in fact, 5 day and 3 day demands. So again, I kind of put possibility of retesting, but then they just came back down. Both of them, this and LRC, have come back down really hard. So it has come down, all the way to this 4 hour at the start. I reset the alert yesterday, thinking this is probably going to run through for this 3 day below, but I don't really know what's going on with that, like what that random pump was. But yeah, it's not at the moment looking like it wants to hold this zone. It's got another 3 days, and then it may flip this 5 day to a 5 day supply, in which case I'll probably be more inclined to look for shorts on that. Um, but yeah, I need a little bit more follow-up PA on this. I won't show LLC right now, but I think basically it's the same. Quick look. But yeah, I'll do this. So this is actually a tad stronger. I think I did set the alert on the 4 hour on this, but like for a follow-up alert, but it was coming down a little more slowly than ICX, but yeah, obviously hasn't got as low as that. IMT was kind of doing really nicely last week, and then I realised it's been delisted from futures, so I kind of deleted all my alerts and said, okay, but we got a really nice long off here, and then it gave it, then it went straight back up, came straight back down, and then gave another move up, and then I had another alert for this hourly, 2 hourly demand, which did get an initial scalp bounce off it, but then also came deeper, but for another decent move. But kind of irrelevant now because it's been delisted, so I was going to trade that. Jelly was one I was watching. I just did this as my final one now. Jelly was watching in this consolidation for quite a long time. Unfortunately, it really well. I mean, on the plus side, I guess, because I didn't put any. I just said to watch it rather than actually put any alerts on this. I said it's starting to look worryingly like Wiz, so you can then look at the Wiz chart if you want to see what I mean by that. But was really hoping this would get a break up from here, but at the moment it's looking like it's not going to do that, and it's now in fact flipped the other way. So 3 day kind of had a slightly dubious 2 day supply in there anyway, and now has made a daily supply. So at least I'm going to see this is going to get a push down into there, and potentially even if it can't break out from here, I'm thinking this is probably going to go a lot lower. Which is not working properly. Does have a 2 weekly demand in there, so we can see what happens when we get there. If we get back there. In fact, this is also a weekly level now as well. Indirect weekly level. So yeah, because of the close over this weekly here, then it is worth looking for longs on this daily retest, to pick up that weekly as support there. And then again, this is a very good one to be in if it can hold, because obviously it's got no supply, so its scope is fairly big. There was all this fuckery going on here, though. I think I can't remember exactly what was happening, but yeah, I don't know if that fuckery is still in place or whether whoever was doing that is now out and sold. But yeah, just be a bit careful. Make sure you have stops, etc. Yeah, so that's where are we? Okay, let me do the Ks. I'm sure I'm at least halfway through the alphabet. Yeah, so KMNO whipped up into 2 week supply. I haven't done all the detail of this going down. I did like this off the lows. It's in a 6 month demand. Hit 3 week inside it, came down deeper in the 3 week into a weekly inside it, and then got the retest. So I think I got a retest, or maybe that was just an aggressive line. So we had a bit of too aggressive long there for the higher low based on 6 month demand, and then it came down a bit deeper. It's a very choppy through here, so I don't love that. But does have a nice clean 2 week demand down there, so I would like to see that if it comes back here. It's also got a 3 day inside there. Two-day. And it's got various, so it's obviously got, I'm not going to put all these in actually, I'm just going to put the levels in. 2 day. So it's quite a lot of chops. I mean, like maybe this will hold this just at immediate level, so we just need to see the reaction off there. So I like to keep an eye on this actually, because I think, this could potentially give a nice short, because of that wick that it's had off it there. Could potentially give a nice short if it gives a decent retest. So it has already tested this 2 day zone on the daily. So again, like I say, it makes that challenge. Nothing really I want to short in there right now. There's an hourly up there. Yeah, so I'll set an alert on that hourly. So again, it could still be a little bit aggressive on there. I think I've got an alert higher, so if I hadn't got that up down, we're going crazy. No, I didn't. Let's do that one's far too high. £1 supply. If you put disclaimer at this stage, still above the demand. So yeah, again, it's just that structural risk that we are still in this uptrend. This is still possibly, it still could potentially do a very badly drawn, here a retest and just continue going up. But at a minimum, maybe we'll get a short off that zone if it gets up there. Then finally, KOMA. Okay, so this is back down in a 4 or 5 day demand down there. So I had a short off 2 week supply up the top there, or weekly supply in fact, and is now back down in this to do that 4 day demand, but also has a 4 day supply immediately above. So I'm feeling like a lot of the alts, I just feel like we're going to do quite a lot of ranging, I think, because so many now have this 4 day supplies above, 2 day supplies above, etc., etc., and they're coming back down into 4 day 2 day demands. So that a bit lower as well. Seconds of rejection a bit sooner. So the 3 day, 4 day, 2 day, and there above. So now we just need to see what the reaction is, off this level. Is this going to come back? Are we going to start? Are we making higher lows? If we're making a higher low, are we then going to make a higher high? So the two, the options here are we're still in a downtrend. Oops, options are we're still in a downtrend, or we're still in a downtrend, but we're trying to make an uptrend, and it's possible we're going to make an uptrend and eventually get through these supplies, or we're still in a downtrend and we're just making a triangle here while we figure out whether this is going to break up or break down. And for me, I think this triangle thing is probably one of the more likely scenarios at the moment, given in so many cases we've got supply above and demand below, and many of them are coming off monthly supplies and things at the highs. Not in the case of KOMA, it's only weekly, but still. But and again, if I start seeing a lot of alts, like pulling one pattern, then I'll assume the others are probably going to do the same. So, for example, this suddenly goes like that and it takes out this supply with ease, then I'll be like, okay, maybe we're in a more bullish market. Alternatively, this doesn't hold, and I start to see alts breaking down. I've had the odd one, but not many so far. Then I'll start to think, okay, we're in more bearish. You go back to the others chart. At the moment, like I said, we've just come off the top of this 3 day demand. We've got this 2 day supply. So, at this point, my higher probability, I think, has come back up into this 2 day and come back down in here. So again, are we going to get that triangle? We've kind of already got base of it, but are we going to get a triangle form here, or are we going to just kind of drift? Yeah, so that's it. So that's up to, where did I get to? I got to the Ks. So I will do L to Z hopefully later this evening, and or possibly tomorrow morning again, and then get that uploaded for you. But I hope that's given you at least some ideas of what to look for, and or some trade ideas. So you can obviously keep an eye out on the things I tell you about. All you're doing on is looking at these zones and watching the lower time frames, and you pick your lower time frame. But you can enter on 15-minute if you really want to, but some of these charts look hideous on that time frame. Like 4 hour, 8 hour, 12 hour, I think are probably the most reliable ones. Certainly, they've been the most reliable for shorting the highs. So any high, if you see a high formed, if it makes an 8 hour, 12 hour supply, check that on the lower time frame there isn't an untested hourly or something above, like I've talked about. If there isn't, then those shorting those 12-hour supplies are kind of the most reliable. Then have a look at final thing. So I do remember, I think Manikai was at least one of them. To see where this had ended up. Yeah, so this is what I mean. So if it's hit a major zone that you want, it's got a nice clean 12-hour and an 8 hour in there, you look for that short retest, and those are going to be your most reliable trades. There was another one in there that was similar actually, but I can't remember which one it is now. Yeah, so I hope that's useful, and I will try and come back at some stage in the next 24 hours at least to do the L to Z and upload that as part 2 later. Have a good afternoon.